Afternoon, everyone. Today's research topic that I'll be presenting is at actually studying the relationship between efficiency of education and economic development in a comparative study framework. Actually, the authors of this paper are prepared by Professor Hoda Hamid and myself, Hajar Tarek, who are going to be taking you throughout the presentation. First of all, is my slides are shared?
Yes, it's clear.
Yes,
all right.
Thank you, yes.
All right, in fact, education not only plays a vital role in spurring countries' economies, but also it became one of the main goals of the SDGs that were introduced by the UN. And from that point, countries started to assess their education system in order to improve their economic development stances. And from here, the aim of this paper was to study the relationship between efficiency of education and economic development. In fact, after reviewing the literature review and the past studies, it happens to be that only few studies have tackled the concept of efficiency for education in relationship to economic development. And sadly to say that even those studies that have tackled this concept, they only focused on developed countries to be their sample of the study and did not take into consideration the developing countries as part of their research sample. However, these studies have showed that there is a positive relationship between efficiency of education and economic development, which agrees with the economic theories that were reviewed. Moving to the research problem, actually one of the obstacles that hampers most developing countries to achieve development is their inefficient education system. And according to the previous studies, it happens to be that developing countries are recognized by having an underdeveloped education system. And accordingly, a development education strategy complemented by investment in education is needed in order to provide or to promote education efficiency and thus achieving economic development. Moving towards the importance of the study, the study helps in filling the gap and updating the literature review, not only through analyzing the relationship between efficiency for education and economic development, but also the study will be focusing on a new sample of developing countries and specifically the North African region. The study will also help countries and especially developing countries in assessing or giving them or highlighting even the tools to measure their education efficiency and what are the drivers that they can rely on to improve their economic development stance. So the hypothesis of the research here is actually focusing on whether developing and investing in education system will have a positive relationship on promoting economic development. And this is the main hypothesis for the research to test. So as I said, the main objective is to examine the hypothesis that I've just stated previously and to also test sub-objectives as follows. First, highlight and understand the concept of education efficiency and economic development. Compare the education efficiency stance between developed countries and developing countries. And finally, analyzing education efficiency determinants and drivers through which developing countries can improve in order to promote their economic development stances. The methodology that I have relied on is basically an empirical approach, which I have employed a panel regression model in order to assess this relationship. And since it's a comparative framework, which was a comparative between North African region and Asian countries, the study actually selected 10 countries. These countries were from the Asian countries: India, Japan, Indonesia, Korea, Malaysia, and Pakistan. As for the North African countries, there were Egypt, Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco. The time frame of the study was from the period of 2000 to 2021, and the data were extracted from international organizations such as the World Bank, UNESCO, World Economic Forum, etc. As you can see here, this is the research model that has been constructed from a regression point of view. Actually, I have selected the Human Development Index to act as a proxy to reflect the economic development. And here it acted as the dependent variable. For the efficiency of education variables that I have selected, these were the secondary and tertiary enrollment, pupil-to-teacher ratio in the secondary and tertiary level, literacy rate, and government expenditure. However, there were also two control variables that have been selected in this model, which acted as the foreign direct investment and inflation. The research model results, and after running the panel regression model, actually the results can be categorized in two main categories. The first category is the variables that had a positive and significant impact on the HDI. And these variables were government expenditure, literacy rate, secondary enrollment, and tertiary enrollment. As for the second category that had a negative impact on the HDI, these were the unemployment and pupil-to-teacher ratio in both secondary and tertiary enrollment. As for the control variables, the foreign direct investment had a positive impact on development. On the contrary, inflation had a negative significant impact on development. It's worth mentioning that North African countries compared to Asian countries have the least rates when it comes to efficiency of education variables, and thus North African countries lag behind in their economic development performance, which were reflected in their low HDI scores. Finally, the main findings can be looked at in three different levels. In the first level, which is on the economic theory, actually there is a positive relationship between education efficiency and economic development supported by the research model that we have conducted. Inefficient education is mainly due to the lack of education spending, misallocation of resources, and the low quality of education. In the second level, this level is mainly concentrating on the Asian countries' experience, and actually Asian countries pay more attention on spending on education and even focus more on enhancing the quality of education through different tools, either increasing government expenditure or providing up-to-date learning tools, diversifying the curriculum and offering different types of tests. And therefore, they have high efficiency of education that promotes economic development. Interestingly, Korea specifically paid attention to linking the education system with the labor market needs, to constructing education programs and curricula that provide skills demanded by the labor market, which thus contributes to the economic development. Finally, the third level, which is the North African countries. And most of these countries had a mismatch between the education skills and the labor market needs, which results in high unemployment rates. There's also a lack of a special dedicated education development strategy and clear targets that matches the education objectives. They also focus more on the quantity of education rather than the quality of education. For example, they pay more attention on increasing the number of classes over enhancing the teacher's quality. They are still using traditional learning tools and they still have underdeveloped education infrastructure.
Okay. Professor, wrap it up. Thank you.
Actually, the last point was the low government expenditure on education, which leads to decrease in their education system. Thank you.